For Group A, please come forward. You have 5 minutes to talk your points and Swamiji will answer accordingly.
Hello, I'm here on behalf of Group A. We discussed and summarized some main points from today's morning presentation by Swamiji. Today Swamiji presented story 3 from Chandi, which deals with Sattvika mindset. This mindset, nicely explained as transparently covered from reality due to its close proximity to Atman or real nature. As for previous mindsets of Tamasika and Rajasika, Sattvika mindset, that is the Sattvic ego, also has its own associated obstacles or attitudinal problems. For example, holier than thou, spiritual pride, being stuck and complacent with whatever achieved in the spiritual life, siddhis and powers, and having that sense of bliss and not willing to go beyond that. There were some tools that were discussed. For example, Paraviveka, that is like having higher degree of discrimination, Ishvara Shrishti and Jiva Shrishti, having that distorted vision, getting rid of it. Then further, we all chanted Devi Stuti together. And very interesting point that we all discussed was that all these positive and negative qualities, we gave it to Devi. Devi has represented the positive things like Shakti, Buddhi, and negative things like error, fear. So all these we put them as a representation of like some qualities that are associated with Devi, and we respect Devi, that it is all coming through you, and we going through these experiences, you are letting us go through these experiences and slowly going to that state where we come out of it, these dualities. So after this, we had some questions for Swamiji. First is, how will this raga and dvesha, how will we be able to get rid of it with time? Second, if one has a sattvika mindset, but if there are some pockets of tamas, or sometimes moving smooth, it's a smooth ride, and then somehow the tamas comes into the picture, and then it really bogs you down. So the genuine question was that, is there a hope to come back to the sattvika state, and how to do that? One of our members was curious and wanted to ask more about what happened to Sugriva. Was he just a messenger, or whether his pride was dissolved? What happened to him? Fourth question, ratios of gunas. So we are all have proportions of guna, 3 gunas in some form. So the question was, these proportions, are we born with it? And in various spheres of life, whether these proportions play different role, like they change its proportion, I'm someone else when I'm at the temple, something different when I'm at the workplace. So that was a question. And the last one. When we have situations or circumstances, we identify them, our mind identifies them as problems, these are the situations, have to deal with it. So, one member, I wanted to ask whether it's just because we realized it now that it's become a problem for me, but if otherwise are these forces that are normally, naturally present everywhere? I don't know if we formulated this question right, but these problems, when I'm experiencing, I'm realizing it as a problem. That is a situation, that circumstance is a problem. But if I had not realized it through my mind, was it always there everywhere, like a force, as a force, negative or positive force?
So you're saying then is a problem has, I've become aware of a problem. Whereas you're saying now that if I wasn't aware of that problem, but was the problem always there, that it existed. So now it's come into my awareness, but even if it didn't come into my awareness, has it always been there? In that one, and what comes to my mind in that one is, if problems exist when you're in Thomas, so for example, they occur within our unconscious mind. I may have a habit of shouting. I don't realize, Bengalis, we have a habit of shouting. I didn't, and I was unnoticed. You should see me and Swami Harinamananda when he was assistant there. We'd be in the kitchen and it's like two people shout. I come from a family of shouters. My father's a shouter, my mother's a shouter. It's a Bengali tradition, okay? And so, and Swami Harinamananda, he also can get a little sort of shout, and it's our way of discussing. So why I brought this point up is that it was unknown to me that until sometimes I in my normal conversation shouting, that some other, especially Westerners, they get upset, right? They don't take it the way that in the Bengali culture they do. So was it a problem? I think there could be problems in our unconscious that we're not aware of, right? And those problems always are there because of something, and then we become aware of them. And when we become aware of them, we can do something about them. So idea in Thomas is that, yes, the problems are there, but we're not aware. So the whole point of this first story is to bring those problems into awareness. So, as I've understood sometimes, there's maybe two ways of doing this. In the Indian way, when I've asked our senior sadhus, how do we take care of our unconscious mind? Many of them say, you just chant your mantra, like chanting the mantra. So then they give the example, like chanting the mantra, what are you doing? Is you're pouring clean water into a water with a dirty water, and as you pour clean water, eventually the dirty water starts to come out, right? And that's one way, as I've understood doing that. But I also have come to understand, this is me, that sometimes you'll talk to a Westerner and they'll say they have to go to a therapist. Because there are things that are stuck within a deep layer of their unconscious that they can't get rid of. Okay? So the reason they go to a therapist is to bring those problems to the surface so now they can deal with them. But the problem sometimes comes, I've heard Swami say that it's good to dwell on them, but then you dwell, but for how long do you dwell? Because when you're dwelling on them, are you creating another negative samskara that's reinforcing that problem, that negativity? And this is something I'm also trying to understand. I'm just giving you something about what we call therapy psychology. In the Indian tradition, we don't use it, but in the Western tradition, they do. And when the Swamis say therapy is not right, a lot of Westerners will recoil because it helps them. And so the problem wasn't a problem, comes to the surface of our mind, we're now made aware of this. Now we can deal with this into our conscious mind. Now the thing is how to release that. That is the challenge. As opposed to Thomas's dwelling, where again you perpetuate the same fear, you stay in the same cycle. How can you bring it up to the awareness and then let it go. Okay? So I'm just putting some thoughts that are coming to my mind about this. So yes, the problems do exist. We're just not aware of them. Okay? And they're unconscious habits that we do. So to me, one way is bring them into consciousness. And once you bring them into consciousness, now you can, how do you tackle it? One of the ways you say is offer it to the divine, as you were talking about. Offer to the divine. Girish Ghosh did that, right? I think he was, every time he drank something, he'd offer to the divine. And pretty soon, we talked about this yesterday, and this happened by some Western devotee. I have a drink, I think of mother, I offer to mother. Pretty soon, within 1 year, the thought of mother was consuming him and intoxicating him. And so it filled him with enough intoxication where the alcohol eventually let go. Okay. So, but here's the thing, he's bringing into awareness what the problem is and offering. So one way I think that can be done. But I do think that the problems do exist. These are part of our past conditioning, our past samskaras. And so spiritual sadhana is the way how we deal with these problems. But I do agree that I think sometimes we need to bring them into our awareness and then dislodge them.
Thank you, Swami.
Any other points you wanted to make?
Yes.
Well, so many questions. We know that, but anyways, they're good questions for us to think about. Marge, you want to say something?
Okay, so
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay.
yes.
And just one other point for Thomas. When you're feeling pockets of Thomas, we all do that sometimes. In this sattvic region, when you're Thomas, what does it mean? You get a glimpse of the divine. We call it the dark night of the soul. Then all of a sudden, the divine is removed from you. And now you're yearning. You had some flash, some vision, something. And now that Thomas, why is it taken? So that you keep moving on. So that Thomas actually becomes a motivation for you to keep yearning. It creates the yearning within you. When you see your beloved, and then all of a sudden, she's taken away from you. Your thought, your mind, everything is just thinking about her. Otherwise, if you see her all the time, you take it for granted. So Thomas is useful. These things also have useful benefits for in our lives. And I think when you have these pockets of Thomas also, get inspiration. And for spiritual life, the best inspiration is being with someone who is living that life. And that is what we call sadhusanga. Sadhusanga, actually, I used to think it's what the sadhu says. I can learn from their words. As I think in my own little way mature, to me, I used to watch, when watching Swahananji, it's not what he said, but what he did. And it's what he did in private. The small little actions that he did of unconditional love, unselfishness. When I gave you yesterday example, if you shall love, Raj said, if I love, you shall fail to know. If you come to know, I have failed to love. Well, he's calling, making sure people are okay without them knowing. He's doing so many things without us being conscious of. So my feeling is that in pockets of Thomas, go and be with these really holy people. And there's a Tushar I should define. Holy people, holy satsang is anything that takes your mind to the divine. So it doesn't have to be just this Gera is a holy person. You have anybody who you see is spiritual. I'll give you another example. We have a person, Mother Clemmy, in San Diego. I don't know if she became the saint of San Diego, a Western woman who practiced Vedanta for 60 years. And she was living in our San Diego, and she was living a few blocks away from the San Diego ashram. She was a disciple of Swami Harinamananda. She was a person who gives us hope. At the age of 75, what did she do? Her husband died. She made a decision. I have now I can either go towards mukti or I can go towards the world. Do I really want liberation? If so, what do I want to do? I'm going to turn off the TV. No more radio. No more newspapers. And at the age of 75, she turned all of that off and just put her mind in God. And her practice is living with the divine. Learning to practice, Brother Lawrence says, learning to live with the divine. So she put Holy Mother in her heart. She kept reading about Swami, Holy Mother's life. At 75, for 10 years, she did stuff, and then she did japa all the time. And what started happening, the japa started going on in her mind continuously. This japa yagya, and so all the time, without her effort. This happened for 10 years. Then she started having the vision of the divine. She became so holy when we had Swamis like Divyananda, Swamis, visiting Swamis. She couldn't come to the ashram. They went to her place. Okay? She had a thing. When she went back to Europe, she was a disciple of Swami Harinamananda, and she was in France, and her one goal she asked Swami Ritajananda, I want to go with you to India. And Swami Ritajananda said, no, you will not go to India. India will come to you. What started happening? She always think, why did he say that? Why did he say that? She became so saintly, all these sadhus started to come to her. Then we did a little biography on her life. We interviewed her. This interview ended up in New York. Swami Tata Gatananji Maharaj knew her very well. Showed this video in New York. This video was taken to Bangalore. People in Bangalore, the young was shown. They started emailing me, asking her questions. People from one president of some high-tech company came to San Diego. I want to meet Clemmy. And he said to Clemmy, I took him to the place. I want to pay for the rest of your, I want to pay for whatever your needs for the rest of your life. She was 95 at that point, okay? She said, oh no, that's okay. Whatever you want, make a small donation to the ashram. My point is that at the age of 75, it's never too late for spiritual life. What is necessary is intensity. So she was one who, she told me, she was infatuated with fashion. She had anger problems. She had control issues. She had many of the qualities that we talked about in the Chandi, of these asuras. But at 75, she made a determination. And from that one point of determination, when she meant it. She would no gossip. When you came to her place, no chit-chat, gossip. We just talked about the Divine Mother. And so being in her presence, you felt so uplifted. You felt you were with her mother. And you know, she went to Thomas. She went to periods of like, in fact, let me tell you another thing now. You're reminding me of Thomas. Coming near the end of her life, she passed away at 98. No, 102. So then somehow she liked me. She said, Swami, you're going to be in charge of my, of when I pass away. I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do. I've never done this. You get Swami Sarvadeva. No, I want you to do it. Anyways, I used to go regularly to her place. And then she asked me a question, which I don't know anything. She said, Swamiji, now at the end of my life, what's happening is I had the vision of Mother so many times. And I'm feeling the presence of Mother, but now at the end of my life, I'm finding that these negative thoughts are coming back. Thoughts from my childhood, when I was a young girl. Negative things that happened to me. They're coming back. Why are they happening? I'm feeling so depressed. Why is this? I didn't know the answer. So then I wrote an email to Swami Bhajanananji Maharaj. And he gave me one answer. He said, sometimes in the end of your life, what happens is your conscious mind starts to weaken in power. Things that you're suppressing, pushing down to the unconscious, they start to weaken. And then the unconscious gains more strength. And whatever's in the unconscious begins to come up. So what he said is, just observe. Sort of like, you ever see a magician when they bring out red, white, different cloth coming out of their mouth? So different thoughts will come out from the unconscious. But don't react to them. Like the suction. Allow them to come up Just observe, say Namaha, and let like a bubble that comes to service, it pops. Allow these things, don't react. So she did that, and then she was so happy. It happened for just a period of time. It was like an unraveling of the past is coming. So, and in that unraveling, again she was crying for mother, mother, help me, help me, help me. So in one way, it keeps us moving and moving. Never be satisfied just because you're having the vision of mother. Never be satisfied just because the japa keeps going on and on and on. She wants you to keep yearning for her. Okay, thank you.
Group B, please.
Maharaj, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of points for summary, but we have some questions. If you don't mind.
So we can all think about these questions and then we can reflect on the Q&A session.
Yes. So one question was, can someone really go through all of this that we learned, the stages, the different stages, dhammas to rajas to sattva and then beyond, in one life, and that being like a conventional, normal life? Is this all really possible?
So just a quick answer. Mother Clemmy. Yes, she's done it. And she's hope for us. Okay? There's a question when Swami Smarnaji came as a general secretary to our monastic talk in the nuns and monks in Hollywood. One of the nuns asked them, we know the direct disciples have realizations, and the Swamis have, but that was 100 years ago. Are people still having realizations, God realizations? And Swamiji said, yes. Okay. And Mother Clemmy is an example of someone who's raised in the Western culture, and by going to Vedanta, we believe that she is a God realized soul.
Thank you, Maharaj. The next two questions are somewhat related to each other.
As I say, just retain the question. If she does, is the third also proposed, then so it is the question. This is the question.
Oh.
It is the question. The answer more after the third.
How can we recognize in our spiritual lives, perhaps in meditation, any hints or cues, markers of the different stages, so that we can progress? Yesterday you mentioned about the GPS, the God pointing system, and also that all the three gunas, tamas, rajas, and sattva, they're all within us in different proportions. How do we know which stage we are in? We know that we try to think that the solution to all these also comes from the mind, but we tend to get tricked that we say that it's not coming from the divine. So is it the mind or is it the divine giving us the answers? How can we grow more pure love and devotion so that we can also radiate the love? A couple of points also. In fact, one person had fire alarm go off in their apartment last night, and I was in fact testing their reaction to that. They were able to handle it with calm instead of anger coming in and whatnot. So it was a very interesting incident. Another point was in our discussion was that they mentioned that as beginners, it is a struggle and especially when you're going into spiritual life, or practicing spiritual life, where you have whatever friends you used to have or the family and the association with them are no longer the same, or in the same light. And one person mentioned that it's also because we are evolving and we are changing, and it's not their fault. So we had a good discussion along that lines, and that's the end of our question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Group C, please.
Namaskar. I'm afraid we don't have any questions. You might be happy about that. Only question is to my group. Despite my protestations, it was a unanimous vote for me to be the representative today. I think the first group did a really good job summarizing, so I'll try not to summarize, just highlight a couple of the themes that we talked about. One of the things that came out early was, because today was about sattva, that this seems like a very high bar to set, or a high ideal for us to be dealing with, and to even speak of moving beyond it, seems like something that would be very difficult to achieve. And in talking around that, we had, I guess we came across a couple of things. So one was looking at the three gunas not sort of just as a ladder or stages, but as states. And I think we've referred to this a lot, different proportions that occur in everybody. And, certainly there's a stage conception, but it's maybe that's where your center of gravity is, the proportion that's most dominant in you. And that it's less about trying to achieve one particular ideal, but understanding the obstacles that face us in these different states and what they are. But as well from the stage conception that, well, let's just get this up first. Let's worry about getting beyond after. That this in itself is enough. And, it's better to have first world problems, so to speak, than to be stuck in comments all the time and be dealing with that. So perhaps these could be better problems to have. We also talked about Raktabija and how this metaphor seemed to apply also to the samskaras, vrittis, vasanas, however you like, and that really what it all came down to was, again, being able to offer those seeds to the mother, so that they don't take root, similar to our action in karma yoga. And that in that spirit of offering, that really the theme through all of these, through all the gunas, is the offering of the ego, and that the ego is sort of the last offering. And so, talking about the pitfalls there, the spiritual ego, I was particularly myself was reminded of a book that I discovered many years ago by Chogyam Trungpa. He referred to it as spiritual ego in the sattvic state. He termed it as spiritual materialism. But it's a theme that I think doesn't get a lot of play necessarily. So you can get into spiritual life and get sort of caught up in keeping up with the Joneses. You may be keeping holy company, but now you sort of become, before it was about how big is my TV, my big screen, and now it's how big is my sadhana. Right? So, and I just had a comment, because it was so interesting when you brought up Western psychology sort of approach versus sort of Eastern spiritual approach. I was reminded of, I don't know if anyone's familiar with Anthony de Mello. He's a Jesuit was teaching in India, essentially teaching Vedanta to Christians in India. And he was trained as a Western psychologist, and he used to talk about it as, he sometimes felt that these two things were at odds, because in the one, he's helping to uplift the ego, repair the ego, fix the ego, strengthen the ego. But then he wondered, at what point am I doing me a disservice? Because really, at the end of the day, I need to teach this person, how to let go of it. So maybe there's a correlate there in Thomas, where we're, again, maybe better if we can strengthen that person, give them some rajas in their life to move out of that state, and that we can maybe deal with that in space. So, Ben, thank you.
Thank you.
I request if Swamiji wants to deal with some questions that Group A had given, and I request Group B to please deal.
I thought we were going to do that in the Q&A session, Maharaj.
This is now going to be
10 minutes?
more than 10 minutes.
No, how do you recognize? So these questions, this set of questions seems to be like, how do we know what stage we are in? How do we recognize in our spiritual life meditation? How do we recognize in our spiritual life meditation or cues of the stages so that we progress? Well, what's a simple way? Let's just start with the simple way. What's a simple way to know that, what did Swami Prabhupada say that, how do we know we're progressing? What did Swami Vivekananda say? That's it. Let me just go to Swamiji. So, what? How do we know we're progressing? Swami Vivekananda, I believe, he stated that you can have visions, you can have... How do we know? First, we ourselves have to know. It's very difficult for someone else to know. They used to say, how do you know if a person's a God-realized soul? Only another person can recognize another knower of Brahman. So, he said, I think the one quality...
Faith in yourself.
Faith in yourself, but to know another knower of God, you have to become a knower of God. But as I believe, what I remember now, Swamiji had said that you have to take one quality of spiritual life to indicate your spiritual growth. What would that be? Selflessness. Selflessness. How much do you think of yourself versus how much do you think of others? And let me give you this example. It's coming up in my mind now. There is a, how do we know sometimes if we're growing, spiritual growing? There's a Swami I was very close with, Swami Akuntananda. He was, he's also known as Shambhu Maharaj. He was in Gold Park, the Institute of Culture. He was a disciple of Swami Akhandananda. But he was born in Bolar Moshe's house. And if anybody has read the Gospel, I think Sri Ramakrishna used to say his second house was Bolar Moshe's house. He used to go there, lots of times. And this Swami sat on the lap of Holy Mother. He met 10 of the 16 direct disciples. His grandfather was Bolar Moshe himself. And I used to ask Maharaj, why did you come become a monk? Because Sri Ramakrishna says, anybody gets liberation, then 7 generations down, they also get liberation. 7 generations up, 7 generations, you're free. Donald Trump says, I can kill someone and be free. Maharaj, you can do whatever you want and be free. Why are you here renouncing? So he was one of the austere monks of our time. He was so austere that when he was in Gold Park, he used to take a bus at 85 years old. He used to take a bus from Gold Park to Sevar Pratishthan. And one time, Swami Masananji Maharaj, he was the General Secretary at the time, came and told us, if I ever hear Swami, Shambhu Maharaj is taking the bus, I'm going to take you, that's it, I'm going to take you by my knee and crack your back. So you shouldn't do that to such a senior Swami. But he was an austere Swami. He used to wear the same shoes, he used to stitch his shoes up, last of that type of austerity. So anyways, although he had all these things, I became very intimate with him. He told me personally, he never had any vision. He never had any vision. What's the indication? Am I growing spiritually? But he told me personally, he said, I never had any visions. And I mean, Maharaj, you used to go with Swami Brahmananda. He told me, you used to go to Swami Brahmananda to Bolaram, to that Star Theater, and see some plays. You lived in the life with God. Even though all this he had, there's something, he had a little regret. I wish I should have had, this Diksha from Swami Raja Maharaj, and I haven't had anything. He did a lot of work. He was the lawyer in Bellarmine. So, at the end of his life, what happened? I left. I was with him for 1 year, for 14 months, and then I left. At the end of his life, he had no vision. He didn't feel like he was growing. He didn't feel any spiritual progress. Then I heard from his sevak, the day before he passed away, he had a vision of Swami Brahmananda coming to get him. And so, what happened that day? Then he gave all his court cases back to Bellarmine on that same day in the afternoon. And he made arrangements for what would happen to his attendant, the Swami, because he had been with him for many years. And then, the day he passed away, he got up, he was sleeping, he had lunch, he was in his bed, he got up, the attendant told him, he got up, there's a picture of Thakur, Mother and Swamiji, and he looked at it, and then he sort of keeled over. I told this to some senior Swami, and the Swami told me something as an interpretation of what happened to Shambhu Maharaj. He said, you see, in spiritual life, what happens is we get on the train for spirituality. Some people will have the window seat, some people will have the aisle seat. Now the train will move. The train moving means we are progressing. But sometimes we're not aware of it. The person with the window seat will see various things. If you have a mystical type of mind, a yogi type of mind, your experience is maybe to have these type of visions. But if you don't have that mindset, you may not be experiencing it. So what happens then is the train goes, and then it has the ability, it stops at different places. Now, the person in the aisle seat doesn't see anything, but he's still moving along. The person in the window seat sees things, and the problem with having a window seat, you do see a lot of things, but then you get allured by things. You may want to get off the station and then hang out at that mystic view that you see. And what happens sometimes is we have a vision, we have something, and then we start to tell others about it. Oh, you know, I had this vision. Like yesterday I told you about the open secret. We start to tell others, but don't tell anybody. The open secret, right? So we tell everybody, and our ego grows. And what happens I've heard in spiritual life, the reason you don't talk about your experience is because it's an intimate experience that was given to you. And so there's energy, Shakti in that. And every time you talk about it, like hot air in a balloon, you diffuse it. And each time you tell another person about it, you're diffusing it, and diffusing it. So the energy, the purpose of that vision now doesn't serve its purpose. The purpose was for inspiration, perspiration, to continue on, but now it becomes a source of your own ego. So now, but the person in the aisle seat, they keep having that faith. Keep going, keep going, keep going. And ultimately, at the end of the destination, they get the vision of whatever that vision is, of the divine. So, this was the idea behind that sometimes it's difficult to know how if we're progressing, but the idea is, are you becoming more selfish, unselfish? Are you going to God or being drawn away from God? If you're a Jnani mindset, Swami used to tell me, if you're a Jnani mindset, you will have more conviction in the truth. You will believe whatever you're yes, I am that. It may not be a mystical type of experience, but your conviction in that truth is unsupar. You live in that reality. Those things that we think on, we talk about these spiritual truths as like a sort of a hypothesis. Okay? So we have some type of faith, but they truly believe it. And if they truly believe it, then they live it according to their lives. And if you're a bhakti type of orientation, you're going to have more love for God. So we can't always gauge. God will start coming like Mother Clemmy. Will start more and more in your mind. And then less and less from the world. And it's very difficult in the beginning. And one question was about when we leave the world, our friends will look like we're crazy. Why are we spending more time? They'll try to draw us back. Anytime you start getting in the realm of Indra, they get this little jealousy of the gods. So they put temptations for you to draw you away. So your friends will try to pull you back. But you have to have enough strength to keep going on, until they start to realize you are sincere in what you're doing. And then they realize that your sincerity, then they let you go. They understand this is who you are. And then, what happens? They start to respect you. In fact, in our sadhu life sometimes, I heard, there are those sadhakas. They just do their tapasya. They're not the great speakers. They're not the great organizers. Swami said this. He said, if you're a great speaker, you'll be known. By the time you're 40 or 50, you'll be known. Great orator. You'll start to, all these qualities will be known amongst recognizing the others. But if you're a sadhaka, the quiet, silent type, you won't be known till much later in your life. But you'll be more respected. The people in our order that we tremendously respect, people like Gopesh Maharaj, Swami Shantanandaji Maharaj, there's a Swami I like, Ram Maharaj. These Swamis, they are less known sometimes in our order. They become known much later, afterwards. But they're the ones we highly respect. Remember the quote I told you yesterday? Swami Krishnananda, what did he say? What was his motto that he lived by? What was it? Learn to love in silence. Learn to love in silence. Learn to work in silence. Meaning, if you can do work without your ahankara, craving for recognition and attention, just do it because you get love. You feel it's a true offering to the divine. And that's all that matters. It doesn't matter who knows what they know. I've seen it here. I've seen it here. With the Swami here. Okay? So, this is how you know you're growing spiritually. Are you going more towards God? Do you think more about God? In your ego, is God crowding in and your own selfishness out? Swami Vivekananda, do you think more about yourself or do you think more about God or others? And I remember Swami Bhuteshanandaji Maharaj said one time, he was in his book, I think, he was meditating, he let his mind roam freely to see where would we go. And it just roamed in the Akasha space to see, what desires would take over, where would it go? And he said, happily, it landed, I believe, I can't remember the exact, at the feet of Sri Ramakrishna. When we pass away, there's that idea that the last thought will be our next destination. So if we attest, it's just allow your mind to see, let it roam free. Just don't control it, let it roam free. Where does it tend to go? Is it going to CNN? Is it going to the gossip? Is it going to the family members? Or is it more and more just slowly, softly going to the beat of the line? I think that's a good test to know if we're growing or not. All right, 10 minutes is up. Okay. Okay, thank you.